Lovely. Right. So, start. Warm up. You're rubbing your hands together. It's quite vigorous. And then lightly tapping over your face. And then over your head and neck. Shoulder. On the other side. Nice. And then onto the upper part of your chest. Your belly. So as you come to each part of your body with your hands, just let your attention rest there. See how it feels with the tapping on your legs. Good, okay. And then sitting back, try to maintain that focusing of your attention, which is quite difficult. We do have, I think, quite naturally active minds, inquisitive, curious. We monitor the environment around us in all sorts of ways. And it's not something to decry, it's not something to get annoyed about. But what we're trying to do is to just sit back from that, not cut it off or turn our back on it. Come in to just find a quieter center. So use just that awareness of your posture, your breathing, and specifically because it's Tai Chi, an awareness of the feeling of your weight, just able to sit back in the chair, able to let go into the chair. And feel the response in your body to that sort of foundation, that support from the chair, just in the way that it begins to just release some of the tightness and some of the stiffness in the body. And then into the upright position. So the reclining position gives us an idea of what we mean by releasing, by rooting down. It's that sort of softening of the parts of the body that are in contact with the chair and the floor. And a sort of training away, I suppose you'd call it, however you label it. This is what we're looking for again, finding a position in the chair where you're able to do that. So I'm quite a long way forwards, got support from my hips, support from my feet. It might be further back, just using the lower part of the back of the chair for a little bit of support for your lower back, anywhere in between. And again, this sense of draining away, but it's not angled backwards at this point. It's a sort of vertical movement downwards. A denser feeling in your legs and feet, up into your hips and lower back, and spreading up your back so that the front of your body feels supported and can again just release a little bit. And particularly in the chair-based posture, if I turn to one side, because in the standing, we would be upright and our hips would be directly in line with our shoulders. But because I want some of my weight in my feet here, I've come forwards just a little bit. And in a way that makes that whole sense of the front of the body hanging from our back and our spine a little bit more accessible. It's not massively forwards, it's just a very slight movement forwards, just enough to feel about a third of your weight in your feet. That releasing in the front of your body may make you just more aware of your breathing. It can help the breathing to become a bit smoother, a bit more fluid, because there's less tightness restricting that. And so through this posture, we start to get that feeling of a sense of space within the body, particularly the upper body. And within that space, or the breathing and all the other physiological process, they all involve some kind of movement. It can all begin to work both better in themselves, but also with less pressure on them from other movements taking place. So more of a sense of harmony within the body. A quality that we want to build through the movements that we make. So how we make the movements becomes very important at this point. Maintaining awareness for one thing, so that we recognize if we're doing something that causes to tighten up, but also trying to move in with a different type of effort. This is where the image of moving through water becomes interesting, because when we move through water, we kind of know instinctively that we mustn't tighten up. It just makes it harder. So starting with your head just turning gently, and just be aware at that point where you feel you're beginning to be slowed down. There's a little bit of a resistance to the movement. And at first, just don't go there, but gradually you'll feel that boundary being pushed back by the movement itself, like water eroding away of a cliff face or a riverbank. And the quality of the movement, as well as moving through water, could be said to be like water. So water fills all the spaces that it arrives at. And in the same way, the movement starts to fill the space. Shoulders. Easy and gently. And then going forwards. Hands down to your sides. So this approach is one that we would take all the way through the movements, even the ones that involve a little bit of soft stretching. Always feeling that we're leaving a little bit of space there, going to 75, 80, 85% of the movement. There's another way of putting it. And just letting that process gradually push the boundary out. And then winding around. The term I like to use, came from somebody I know up in Scotland, is that it's the soft boundary. So there's two limits to our movement. If we stretch out fully and rock our joints and everything, that's the hard boundary. And it creates a tightening, a stiffening, and so on and so forth. If we withdraw from that until the point where all the stiffening has gone, that's the soft boundary. It's the soft boundary we work to. Going around the other way. We still want to extend those boundaries. Yes. Easing forwards and push it back. So now your weight moving from your hips, about 2/3 in your hips, maybe just over half in your legs, and then back. And again, to think about that idea of the upper part of your body maintaining that softer quality, that supple quality, it's really important that the effort to move, you know, or at least the kind of the drive, the energy that moves us, is actually from our legs and our feet. So each time you go into your legs, allow your weight to be absorbed. Imagine your legs as springs that get compressed and then push you back. Similarly, as you go back, lower back, hips, buttocks are also compressed, and then they will also push you back. In addition, as you go forwards, feeling that your hips are already dropping back, like somebody's sitting behind your chair, they've grabbed hold of your belt and are pulling you back. So this way you'll get a little bit of an extension through the lower part of your back. And again, think of your spine as being like a spring. This time, as you go forwards, it's pulled out, so it will contract. So your hips dropping back as you go forwards also creates a little bit of a pull back up. And the combination of those things means that your shoulders, your head, your upper body move very freely within a certain range. It won't do you any good outside of that range. So if I'm leaning over, it's not going to help. I have to stiffen up, otherwise I fall out the chair. If I go too far forwards, the same thing. If you've got a back to your chair, try it, because if I go back a long way, suddenly I'm here. And now to make the initial movement, because I'm laying back, I'm going to have to sort of like strain to come up in the first instance. So I only come back up to this original position. So having a sense of where you are in this formation, this stance, is really important. Turning a little. And we want to be able to reproduce this when we do the movements with the arms. And that's quite tricky, because as we know, arms and hands will begin to take over and dominate our awareness. So these exercises, as well as being good exercises for the joints and for our general awareness, actually train us in movements that are absolutely crucial to be able to do the main body of exercises. In particular, the way our legs, feet, and hips work in the chair-based exercises. Their significance to the upper part of the body. These are the things, again, that are the drivers of the whole arm. And then going around. Feel your pelvis just rolling around on the chair, like a bowl that's been spun around. It's just very gentle. Feel that your spine is supported in your back, but not held tight. So there's this sort of fluid, liquid type quality of movement all the way through your upper body. And back the other way. But also quite a powerful movement. If you've ever walked across a room holding a glass of water or a drink, You start off and it's fine. The further you get, a little bit of movement and you have to adjust, and that creates more movement. And then sooner or later, the drink's stopping over the edge of the cup because that will build. So this movement could very easily, without our awareness of that, sort of end up with us doing something like that and pull us out of the chair. So keep a strong sense of your root and of the center of the circle. And what you can do at this point is to gradually make the circle smaller and smaller and smaller, as like water spiraling down a plug hole, until eventually you just arrive at this central point and come to rest. Then shift across slightly, pull one foot up, just step out, heel toe, and back. Heel toe, back. Flexing and extending your ankle. Making sure you've got a good contact with the floor, but not stretching out too far. Just your leg extending, contracting, extending, contracting. On the other side. Okay, so come back into position. So now we bring the arms down into the movement. And we did this movement earlier. The hands, the arms rotating. Basically do the same thing again. So sit back, just let your hands drop down by your sides. And shoulder, hip, you see the arm more or less on that line. I can't do the other hand because of the back of the chair, but do both hands. And this time, as you rotate your arm, tilt forwards, and notice my arm still hanging from my shoulder. And back. Forwards. And back. As before, as your weight moves, so your feet and the hips are functioning. And just notice how the combination of movements, the transfer of your weight, a sense of your chest opening as your hands turn forwards, closing as they turn to face the back. And your upper back doing the same thing, but the opposite way around to your chest. All these movements build into the bigger movement. But at the same time, arms and hands still remaining quiet, like you were carrying the drink across the room. And then even your arms facing back and begin to swing from your shoulders, fisherman casting net. Mostly what you're doing here is you're pulling on your arms. So you're not, if I turn to the side, you're not doing this. You're moving forwards, your shoulders are pulling your hands. They swing through, and as they start to swing past you, you're already going back. So even when the hand gets to here, there is still that pull. I'm going forwards, and there's the pull. So just for a few moments, they swing freely, but they're kind of literally pulled up by the fact that your upper body Your weight are beginning to move in the opposite direction. These smooth feelings through your shoulders, upper back, the big muscle of in your upper back between the shoulder blades, trapezius muscle, is actually used a great deal in this exercise, perhaps surprisingly. So you can feel as though upper back and shoulders are being very gently massaged. Remember that fluid quality in your back. And then coming over. So as though you're rolling the ball in towards your chest. Or as though your hands are just being pulled over the ball. Either way, don't think about lifting your hands. And then change into vision spreads its wings. And then pushing away, elbows coming out a little bit. So here, come back. Again, just do it with one hand. My elbow is actually going out to the side. You don't want your elbow to go behind your body. So as you start to go forwards, just let your elbow come in. See the shape of the arm when it does that curve in shape, which means that as it goes forwards, it just naturally curves up. You turn the hand, you come back about here, you let the elbow go out. So you're using still your chest and your upper back. I'm exaggerating a little bit. You go forwards, you let the chest fold in, drawing your elbow in, and the hand just ends up there. So you haven't got to get back here and then lift your hands and push forwards. You just get that position and let the movement move your arm for you. So the forward movement of your weight, complemented by what's happening in places like your chest and your upper back, are basically converted to a curved upward movement simply by giving the correct shape to your arms and your hands. And with the intent of your mind. One more time. And then hands loosely fisted. And then open the hands and wind back. Once again, here you feel the chest open. Wind your hands, just come to this position. Then bring your hands into position and go forwards. And here, once again, taking the same shape as we did in pushing a wave, of course, as the arms rotate. And that movement inwards with your elbows here is really the chest muscles contracting. If I exaggerate, I do this instead of puffing the chest out and then draw back. Obviously, that's terribly exaggerated. I'll show you from the side. As I do this, it's this, and then that movement draws back. And it shouldn't be anything like as big as that. But that's the feeling that you would get. One more time, coming back. And then from here, turn your hands palm down, polishing the table. Recognize what's happening in your back, the lower part of your back and your hips. As the front of your body turns one way, the back turns the other. So rather than thinking this as a kind of movement forward, think of it as a sweeping circle around your own center. If this was a bicycle, if you had a bicycle wheel there, then and you spun it around, it wouldn't be going left or right, it would be going in all directions at once around the circle. One more time. Let's just rest here for a moment. So I mentioned several things there. One, I was talking about this relationship between what our arms are doing and what's happening in chest and upper back. Another, I'm talking about what was happening in the back as you appear to be going forwards. If those things don't make themselves apparent relatively straightforwardly in those exercises, what you want to do is to go back to the initial set of exercises. This, for instance, you can begin to feel the connection between what's happening in your ribs, what's happening in your upper back, connected to your elbows and your arms. Likewise, this, same thing. You could, again, this is exaggerated, but it's like I'm doing this and then this. See, when I do this in my upper body, You see what my hands do? You can just see my hand. It's moving a little bit, I mean, not quite as much, but then you scale it down so that you wouldn't actually see that movement at all from the outside, but you can still feel it. And then when those movements become familiar enough to you, actually what will happen is they'll naturally integrate into movements like this. You'll be used to them, your body will be familiar with them, and you'll be able to recognize them more easily. Now, bringing your hands into here, a gentle push down through your feet and your hips at the same time. Push your arms up and then down. And then hands out to your sides. And ease forwards. Parting the clouds. Same sense of connection through your body as with the previous exercises, with expansion in your belly and your chest, pushing your arms up and out. And then dragon plucks the stars from the sky. More and more we find as we practice these exercises that we're able to feel that what we see initially is actually the end result of a series of processes that effectively we can only feel in the body. And that's where that wonderful sense of flow comes from, and why the movement in some ways looks quite effortless. It doesn't look like there's much going on, and everybody's surprised when they get to do Tai Chi because they think, well, it's going to be easy because it looks easy. And actually, getting the arms to do what they're supposed to do is easy. It's the other 99% of the exercise that you can't see that becomes quite tricky. It's not an easy art to learn. I was on Saturday, I was at an event and there was a guy there and works for Cambridge United Football Club in their kind of outreach stuff. So he's a big guy, he's a lovely guy. You know, he knows about exercise and that kind of thing. And afterwards he was saying, yeah, this isn't as easy as it looks, because what you see is the end result of a series of processes that you can't see. One more time for dragon plucks the stars from the sky. So, pushing in two directions. I said earlier that if you extend out, you extend to the soft boundary. This isn't a big movement upwards or to the side. And this would be the soft boundary as you push out sideways. This would be the hard boundary. It's the soft boundary that we're working for. Maintaining that sense of space within your body means that the movement is less restricted within your body. And also that we start to get that sense of the flow, the energy of the movement itself flowing around the muscles and the joints and the internal organs, bathing the organs, it's sometimes described as. Remember with this one, your hands slightly in front of your body. Here, not here, that's tightening up. No, can't do it with that arm. Here, in front of your body, not here, not that. It doesn't feel as though you're moving enough. It's possible that previously you were moving too far. If you want to stretch, it's a good thing to do, by the way, but not in these exercises because of that emphasis on the internal movement. But gradually you'll find that if you build from the inside out, you will get more movement. So with this one, for instance, just staying with this one for a few more moments, rather than thinking you've got to push your hands out, which is going to take your attention to your arms and your hands, or to push your hands up, try and think in terms of your body, your upper body expanding. And when it expands, your arms are going to have to move. Imagine if your hands were sort of just resting on a balloon that was deflated, and then somebody started to blow into the balloon. Your hands would start to move, and then you just send them in a particular direction. We can only really maintain that internal movement through a sense of focus. We very quickly devolved to an externalized movement. And there is certainly an external element to these movements, but we have to keep the focus of our attention very much within the body. And that's a real benefit to our mind. So this process benefits mind and body. It makes for smoother, makes for stronger movements, but also helps that quietening quality of the mind. Now this time, just turn over and back. New direction. And then finish the sequence with pushing out to the sides. Push down through your feet, feel the lengthening through your back, push down through your hips, feel your body filling up like the balloon. So provided we can continue to use our legs and our hips to initiate the movement, we do get a wonderful insight in these seated exercises to what's happening in the upper part of our body. Now, extend one foot, scooping the sea and looking at the sky. There you're going to scoop water up in your arms. Angle forwards, but your weight staying predominantly back. Hips drop back, drawing your shoulders up through the expansion in the front part of your body, and just draw your arms over. from the side here as I go through. You see how the hand scoops. I come back here, this movement, not this. I come back, I open belly, I open my chest, and that sends my arms back. And if I'm feeling okay with this, I do actually angle back a little bit. Now, if you do this, you've got to wait until your arms are down here. You don't want to come up like this. You want to go forwards like this. So this is probably the exercise where we come closest to a stretch. But even here, I certainly wouldn't want to go too far backwards, for instance. And here, I want to feel as though I could have kind of gone a little bit further if I hadn't been so intent on the sense of movement within my body. Now, from here, roll your hands into a hollow fist, go forwards. This time, the movement is diagonally upwards through your back, and that should draw your hands over, grasping the tiger's ears. I need to show this from the front, in case anybody watching it hasn't seen it. There, and again, chest opens and closes. And then chest opens and closes. So that rocking in the pelvis, pulling your shoulders forwards, and then your arms. Grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. Good. And switch sides. And then changing. Grasping the tiger's ears. One more time. Now, once again, rubbing your hands together. Again, quite vigorous. We do this before we stand to wake ourselves up a bit. Then over your head and neck. And shoulders, arms. On the side. Your chest, just hopefully raise your heartbeat a little bit, which is a good thing to do before you stand. Belly. And then your legs. And then just pushing your knee up and down, put my hand on my knee, you can see what it's doing, and just pushing the ball of my foot into the floor. And then going around, doing the movement in your hip. On the other side, push up and down. And around. Good. Okay. Now standing. So we're able to explore what's happening in the upper body in those seated exercises, partly because we're well supported. To get the same kind of feeling in standing, we have to be well supported. And what's going to support us is our legs. Legs and hips and so on and so forth. So the basic stance is really important. Feet below your hips. You know, if you've got a broken chair in your house or a chair that's a bit wobbly, you probably haven't picked that chair to do this Tai Chi. You probably wouldn't come along and say, oh, well, yeah, it's okay. The back's falling off the chair, but it doesn't matter. We want a nice, comfortable chair. And in the same way, you want to be nice and comfortable in your legs. One thing you can do, we won't do it now because I run out of time, but these exercises that I said help you to really feel what's going on in chest and upper back and so on and so forth. This one too, even this one, how certain movements that we make with our arms are connected to different parts of the body. We can do that in the chair, and as you know, we do it all the time in these sessions, but you can do those standing as well. And that could be a way of checking whether your stance is actually helping you to move from the inside. This is, I think, one of the very distinctive qualities of Tai Chi. It's described as an internal art. And one of the meanings of that is that the movements are produced from inside, not from outside. Although at the start of the process, actually, we copy the external movements, but only so that we can begin to get a feel for what is happening when we do those movements within the body. So feet below your hips, weight a little bit forwards, and then your hips just dropping back. Hips and buttocks and lower back sort of apparently overhanging slightly. And so quite strong in your legs, sinking down a little bit more, let your hips drop back a little bit more. And pushing up. And drop back. And push up. But expanding and contracting. As you push up, and you feel the push into the spine, this almost rippling effect going up the back. Now, so there's movement there in your body coming from your legs. Bring your hands round and just let your arms build on that movement, or rather pick up on that movement in the first instance. So you're just in the sea and the waves are lifting your arms up and lowering them down. And then wild goose. Feel what's happening in your sides, your solar plexus. And then heart in the clouds. So eventually we get to a point where it doesn't feel as though it needs any effort at all, even to get our arms to go right up. But of course, in the arms, it doesn't feel like a lot of effort, but we can feel what's happening in the legs, in the spine, in our rib cage, our sides, and our chest, and our back, and so on. All contributing movements, energy to the final shape. Lovely. Now, 1 foot forwards, and this time that downward and upward movement is converted into a horizontal movement. We go back, we sink down, we feel the push that would in the initial exercises push us up, and we just direct it forwards, and then we reverse that going back. The change in direction works through this middle part of the body. So again, what we don't want to do, and this is quite difficult because it's a very common habit, it comes out of our normal walking practice, where it works quite well actually, if it's done properly. Well, what we don't want to do is to start the forwards movement like this. And that's very common. In fact, even when we're doing normal walking, we don't want this to happen because we're more likely to fall. What it should be is a tilt forwards and then an adjustment there, but we don't even do that in this exercise. It's all about the legs. And then raising your toes and your heel, turn the front foot out a little bit. So that conversion through the center is really directed by your intent. So it's about you paying attention to the movement, feeling the movement, and effectively instructing your body to go this way. And it might be a particular thought, but it's more likely to be a kind of image, a memory, a combination of a memory of the movement in the mind and the way your body has remembered the movement through the nervous system, the muscles, and then stepping in and out. It's quite hard to make a distinction between what we think of as mind, what we think of as body at that kind of level. But in Tai Chi, we use the term intent. There's an intent to make a particular movement. And then the other foot forwards. Intent is a very common thing for human beings. If you decide this afternoon that reluctantly you really ought to go and tidy up that room, it's been in a mess for a while, and then somehow find yourself in the kitchen with the kettle boiling, the intent to want a cup of tea was much stronger than your intent to tidy up. Not surprising, really. We find ourselves doing that. Why am I here? Oh, yeah, I might as well have a cup of tea while I'm here, sort of thing. So that quality of intent is very important. What we do in Tai Chi is we stop it being random, just raising your toes and your heel. We actually take ownership of it and make use of it, rather than as it does sometimes, it kind of leads us astray. We can do that in our actions, in our speech, our thoughts. Stepping in. And then step through a couple of times. And then going back. So intent is much more efficient than thought. A thought you have to, is a sort of almost a talking to yourself, whereas intent is pretty much immediate. It could be through imagery, memory, ideas, or all sorts of things. Thinking is in there as well. So part of our intent when we do fisherman cast the net is to include all of those other movements, the transfer of the weight, the opening and closing of the chest, and so on and so forth. But you can't have an intent about what you can't do. So once again, you know, the basic exercises are really important. So when I do fisherman cast the net standing, and again, I'm here, I go forwards, again, I'm exaggerating. As I go forward, my hands get held behind. So again, I have that puffing out of the chest. I arrive at the front leg, the hands start to be pulled through, and look how my chest is going back. And then I go back, and then once again, this is really exaggerated. It's a horrible way of doing it. It's much more open. But these are the movements, and I'm just trying to demonstrate how those movements feel in a sense. They are quite powerful movements, even if you can't see them. So we'll start with your weight in your back foot and fisherman cast the net. Once again, it looks effortless on the part of the arms. In fact, there is effort there. You've got the idea, the image, you're casting the net, throwing the sheet over the bed, maintaining the shape with the arms, and maybe even just feeling the play of the muscles. You don't want the muscles of your arms to be sort of held tight, stiff against the bones. Feel the movement, and again, feel that sense of the movement, the energy, massaging, bathing the soft tissue of the body. And then on the other side. And any particular areas, those of you more experienced with this, we can begin to guide our intent. You're stiffening your back, you're stiffening your shoulder. You focus your intent through there. And this is, again, one of the things that builds up as we get more experience with Tai Chi, that those mind-body overlaps that we work with, perfectly natural. Pretty much every human being will have them, but they become much more usable by us through the training of mind and body. Lovely. And bring your feet parallel. Go back to your chair. So, Grace Tiger return to mountain. Coming back to that basic posture that, again, reproduces within our body and within our mind, this quiet, spacious quality that is the foundation for everything else that we do. Without that physical space, then those internal movements can't work properly. Everything's too crowded, like a room too full of people. You can't move around. Without that quietness in the mind, it's very hard to get that gentle focusing of our intent and our intention, because the mind's too busy. It's like, I've got to do this, I need to go shopping, I've got to do this, I've got to ring so-and-so, and so on and so forth. So we need that space in order to make these things work. And we need that space generally because it has a very healing quality to it. And this is where Tai Chi as a meditation fits in with arts like mindfulness and so on and so forth. We need to think of Tai Chi as being more than just physical exercise, which it is obviously, but it really it fits very awkwardly as exercise. I think. I mean, we always promote it as such. It's an obvious thing to do, as I said to a group yesterday, it's actually got as much in common with poetry as it has with aerobics, if not more. So, you know, just it has those different qualities about it. Just letting your hands come down and then pushing your hands out, bringing them around in a circle, drawing your hands in, hips sinking, shoulders dropping, hands following. Just for a moment in that still, quiet space, and then trying to move without losing that, but feeling that even the movement itself, if you're aware of what's happening within your body, will bring you back to that point on a regular basis. This is the rhythm of the movement, expanding, opening movements are yang, closing, contracting movements are yin. And yin yang are two sides of the same movement, two sides of the coin. Can't have one without the other. And rest. Lovely, open your eyes. Thank you very much as always, everybody. We didn't actually do that many exercises, but sometimes it's like that when you